Welcome to Andy Staples on 3. That's right. There's a Pitbull Stadium in college football now. FIU announced a naming rights deal that now makes their stadium Pitbull Stadium. Armando Perez, Mr. 305, Mr. Worldwide, paying $1.2 million a year to have his name on the stadium. Now, he gets some stuff out of that, too. He gets 10 dates a year to use the stadium rent-free. So if he wants to have a music festival, sell tickets, he's probably making that money back pretty quick. But Pitbull's on the stadium. We got some ideas. This has got my wheels spinning. I've got some new stadium names that we're going to have to talk about on this show. We also, part 2 of Stanford Steve later today. We got win totals. We got the big question, Vegas asking, like, basically, who of these SEC teams do you think is going to make the playoff with their win total? So, like, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, all at 9.5. That's essentially Vegas asking you which of these teams is going to make the playoff by whether you say over or under. We're going to talk about that with Stanford Steve later today. But now we got to talk Pitbull, because this is the most college football story in a while. And there's been a lot of stories that were really college football, but this is insanely college football. This is the dumbest sport in America, dumbest sport in the world, and it's a beautiful thing. A beautiful thing. I mean, how about a guy who came, as he says, from the bottom, grew up in the area, gets discovered, starts rapping about dealing drugs, decides, nah, you know what? That's not radio friendly enough. I'm going to go from being Mr. 305 to Mr. Worldwide. He's rhyming Kodak with Kodak. He's partying under a bridge in his videos. And now he's got his name on a stadium. America. I'm just telling you. He had a press conference at FIU yesterday. Here's what he said about the idea.
So when this idea came about, it came about just like a Miami-Dade County 305 idea would come about. Nobody would believe in it, right? So therefore, someone that was very creative, being Alex, who you mentioned, and thank you so much for putting this together, Renee as well, and they kept fighting, and with President Jessel and Athletic Director Carr approving and greenlighting it. All we had to do was just, like we say in Miami too, take it to the house. And that's what we've done at this point. And what we're doing here is groundbreaking. We're making history. This is history in the making. You're going to see that every other university is going to want to do the same thing. But the difference is we don't do this for propaganda. We do it from the heart. We do it because it's meaningful. We do it because I'm from the crib. I'm 305. I'm from the bottom. This is my backyard. And when I say mine, I mean it's ours.
Of course, you got to have a Trick Daddy shout out in there. And also, let's not forget another person who helped young Pitbull's career along very big in the football world. We speak, of course, of Uncle Luther Campbell, 2 Live Crew, who, yes, we know about his Miami fandom, but he's also a high school football coach. So this is, it's all coming together. It all comes around. But I can't believe we're talking about Pitbull Stadium. But that's where we're at. I don't think Pitbull can believe it either.
But to be on this stage is just to motivate everybody out there and let you know that if you put your mind to it and you got creative minds around you, you can get anything done. And that's why I say when someone tells you sky's the limit, you say, nah, partner, this footprint's on the moon. So you keep it moving, you keep it pushing. So with that said, now we're in FIU, and we're talking about Pitbull Stadium.
He can't believe it either. And it's a great deal for him, though. It really is, because he gets his vodka distributed in the stadium. And like I said, he gets 10 dates a year. He can do what he wants with them. We got the contract, of course. FIU did give it out. We didn't have to do the public records request. But it's pretty awesome on both sides. It's a pretty good deal, because this is the most publicity FIU football is going to get. This is a program. Do you know who FIU's football coach is? I do. It's Mike McIntyre. Took Colorado to the Pac-12 championship game a few years ago. But I don't know that most of you do. You know they have a player named Rowdy Beers? You probably knew that. We talked about that on the show. We know they lost a good receiver named Chris Mitchell to Notre Dame in the transfer portal. But maybe having Pitbull around will keep that from happening. We'll see. We'll see in the future. We're going to talk to Pete Nakos from On3 about this because Pete's been doing some stories on naming rights and some of the things that universities are doing to try to be creative to create new revenue before they start having to pay the players quite a bit of their money. But first, we're going to talk to a company that already helping players out, already making the American dream come true, and that is Rhoback. Rhoback has a bunch of sponsored athletes out there. They also have the most comfortable clothing in the history of the world. The performance hoodie, I'm wearing it right now. This is my favorite garment. I've got 5 of them. I had 7. My daughter took 2 of them. And that's what's going to happen. I've warned you about this before with Rhoback. You get the performance hoodie, you may as well order 2 because somebody in your house is stealing 1. But you're also going to want the performance polos. You're going to want the bathing suits. You're going to want the joggers. Oh, by the way, they also make ladies' clothing. So those performance dresses, work on the golf course, work at brunch. Tremendous. If you would like a deal, though, you go to rhoback.com. That's RHOBACK.com. Use the code Andy for 20% off your first purchase. That's rhoback.com. Code Andy, 20% off your first purchase. Like I said, you're going to have to buy that second performance hoodie when you buy the first one because it's getting stolen. It's just cost of doing business. Rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com. Code Andy for 20% off your first purchase. I see a man wearing a beautiful Rhoback performance hoodie right now, and his name is Pete Nakos. What's up, Pete?
What's up, man?
Oh, we're twins today. We got the Rhoback memo. I like it.
Definitely. As producer River pointed out to me before I jumped on, so FIU did Miami Vice uniforms.
Yes.
Here. So could we see a Pitbull Miami Vice collab? Could we see a Pitbull helmet?
We could definitely see a Pitbull helmet. Oh, by the way, Kevin in the chat informs us Rowdy Beer's not on the team anymore.
Darn.
It's a shame. It's a shame. All right. We can we got to have a Pitbull helmet. Yep. This got my wheels spinning. I sent this tweet out. This tweet got a little traction yesterday because I think if Pitbull, who is definitely authentically Miami, if he can do this, we need to see this elsewhere. And what I said is if we don't have Memphis running onto Project Pat Field at the Liberty Bowl this fall, we have completely failed as a society. I would love that. And I had a couple people like, how come you didn't say 3-6 Mafia? Because Juicy J is Project Pat's little brother, and Project Pat's already on all the good 3-6 Mafia tracks. So that's why. And it's there's so many ideas. I told River, because River's a Tennessee grad, I was like, listen, your girl Dalé needs to pony up.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton Field at Neyland Stadium. Is this doable?
Get her facing like around the 20-yard line.
Oh my God. Yes. Dolly Parton logos on both 20s.
Yep.
Is that the only thing that Tennesseans would allow to be on the same field as the power tee and the checkerboard? I think Dolly Parton's face is the only thing acceptable in that circumstance. I don't think they would accept anything else.
I'd have to agree right there. Yeah. Dolly Parton really checks off all the boxes for Tennessee fans.
It's and this is what we're going to talk about because we've talked about this with schools like FIU, even Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kroger Field. They went from Commonwealth Stadium to Kroger Field. Commonwealth Stadium kind of basically named after the state.
Right.
You wrote a story earlier this week, or maybe last week.
No, this week.
You worked the athletic director at Ohio State talking about the naming rights to Ohio Stadium being on the table. And I saw a lot of read the room, Ross. Like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah. And people can say, like, read the room, but at the same time, revenue sharing's coming. And any way you can leverage more dollars makes a lot of sense. When you do start to think though about like what would fit at Ohio Stadium, right? The Schottenstein family is really prominent in Columbus. They own Victoria's Secret. They are linked to American Eagle. Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs just signed.
Wait, I thought Les Wexner was Victoria's Secret. Also, Buckeye grad, big boost. The song, remember that Victoria's Secret song that came out a few years ago? I know Victoria's Secret. She was made up by a dude. That dude is Les Wexner. And like the first time I heard it, I'm like, that's an Ohio State booster. So we could do Victoria's Secret Stadium, but they have a bigger brand in their portfolio right now. Bath and Body Works Stadium. Everybody gets a scented candle when they come in.
That would be or an Ohio State scented candle.
Yes. What does a Buckeye scented candle smell like?
Nuts.
I had a friend who once covered the 24 Hours at Sebring race, and the gift to the reporters who covered the race was a burnt rubber scented candle, which it went well until he left it in the back of his car one day in Florida, and it melted into the seat, and then his car smelled like burnt rubber. So you got to be careful with the candle giveaways. Flammable. There's just a lot of liability concerns there. But seriously, okay, so let's talk about this part of it, because schools are going to be looking for this sort of thing. So it's you're talking about naming rights to stadiums. You're talking about logos on the field. You're talking about maybe logos on the uniforms. My thing is, if you're Penn State, if you're Auburn, if you're people who think, who've always acted as if your uniform is sacred. Yep. Like, you don't do that. But if you're a Baylor or TCU or Oklahoma State or even Oregon, where you've made the uniform and changing the uniform part of the thing, like, why not do that? If you have a stadium that's not named, like, Iowa State, Jack Trice Stadium, that is named after a very important person in your history.
Yes.
Like, his story is very important to the people at Iowa State. Like, you don't change that. But there are other places where it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stadiums, right, where like someone gave some acres to build the stadium or money to help build the initial stadium. So that's going to come up. The one other thing I'm interested to see play out, and we kind of saw in the backlash from Ohio State, was like how many fans will care if a stadium is renamed. I think a little bit more than I initially thought, to be honest with you. And you best believe that a lot of these fan bases are going to care very much about what name their stadium is like renamed. So it's going to be interesting. Jersey patches are a way away still, but I still think that is going to be the real moneymaker in college football.
Yeah, and we've seen it in international soccer or in professional soccer overseas. I mean, like they're so far gone on this thing. Like, the jersey patch is the team logo,
right?
And the big logo on the jersey is the ad. I mean,
that would be like
Manchester City or Manchester United was Emirates Airlines for years and years, and like I knew them more from the Fly Emirates than I did their own crest.
Yeah, and then like the crest is like where the Roback logo is, and it's like that kind of size too. So the real interesting thing will be, as Ross Bjork pointed out to me, is like, how does Nike feel about all this?
Right.
Nike is an official apparel sponsor. That's why they get the logo on this stuff.
They've already been advertising on their uniforms for 30 years.
Exactly. Right. That Nike symbol on the Penn State uniform, like that really sticks out. I mean, same with Oregon and other programs in Alabama. And so is Nike okay with it? Is Nike going to cough up more money so it stays like that? We're not really sure. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and so that part's interesting too. I mean, we got some folks in the chat that want some different stadium names. AJ says, can we get Outcast naming rights on Georgia Tech Stadium or Migos or Future or TI? Listen, in Atlanta, I think maybe Georgia Tech would be a good one. That's a good, good piece of real estate there. I said Georgia State should become Jeezy Stadium, and you can nickname it the Trap. And Like how amazing would that be that a stadium that was once the Olympic Stadium, was once named after Ted Turner when the Braves played there, could be named after a true ATL legend.
I like what you're thinking right there, Andy. I think that makes a lot of sense.
One of my favorites was someone named Braves Swear Jar on Twitter suggested that Houston change theirs to Megan the Stadium.
Wow.
We can't do that because Megan the Stallion just got a degree from Texas Southern. So they're going to get Megan the Stadium.
I like that. Big fan of that one.
That's tremendous.
That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. What about what are you thinking on the West Coast? You thinking like
the Dr. Dre Coliseum. Yep. I believe he's already got the School of Communications named after him at USC. Yep. So let's just take it another step further. Now, he's willing to pay USC millions of dollars. We already know that. So I think that makes sense. The Counting Crows Stadium at Cal, like Adam Duritz is a Cal message board dude. Like he's following Cruton at Cal on the message boards. We don't have a Cal team site here at On3 yet. So I don't know that Adam Duritz is giving us any money, but you think about this, and we're going to expose my age and Pete's age difference here.
I know
Adam Duritz once dated Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox. Like he was a Lisa Kudrow away from the Friends trifecta.
Wow. I did not know that. Wow. Hey, can we go back to USC real quick? What if we did Dr. Dre Will Ferrell Field at Dr. Dre Coliseum?
I love it. Does Will Ferrell need it though? Does he need
No.
And I would assume Dr. Dre. Now he's already sold Beats to Apple, so I don't know that he is going to make any more off of that. So maybe he's got a new idea that he's going to come up with and needs to sell. So yeah, how about the home and home? Between Big Ten rivals, Ohio State goes to the Dr. Dre Coliseum, and then USC goes back to Bath and Body Works Stadium in Columbus.
I'm interested to see, going back to FIU real quick, like how much Pitbull does for the university, right? So if you look at the contract, he can make an anthem, he can host events. He's the official FIU entrepreneur. He's going to have 2 football tweets a game. And it's a lot of options.
He's getting 20 VIP parking passes a game.
Yeah.
I mean, at the Ohio States of the world, you kind of have to give up $1.2 million a year to get the 20 parking passes. So it's a different universe as we're living in here.
And he's going to make money off the vodka in the stadium.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, I think this is a very good deal for all parties involved. And we are talking about FIU. We have spent the first 20 minutes of the show talking about FIU when we never would have talked about FIU otherwise. Like how often I was thinking about this, and we're going to have the athletic director from FIU, Scott Carr, on the show later this week.
Nice.
But I want to ask you this, Pete, because you cover sports business. How often do you have a situation where somebody gives the school money and that generates more publicity than anything they could have done? Usually you have to pay for that level of publicity.
Yeah. I not too much. Like, there hasn't been, you got to pay quite a bit or you got to really make a splash move. And that's exactly what Pitbull did. Speaking though, I'll make the transition here, Andy. Speaking of splashy donations, Iowa State's NIL collective received a $300,000 donation from Elite Casino Resorts yesterday. And that, the irony of ironies right there.
Yes, they had to kick their starting quarterback off the team last year.
They did.
Because he got arrested in a gambling sting. Now, as we've learned, that was a very only an Iowa thing. It happened. Iowa and Iowa State had to deal with the fallout from that. But it is crazy to think that their football team was seriously adversely affected by gambling, and now they're using gambling money to pay the players.
It's crazy. And had some conversations with people, and someone even pointed out to me, like, hey, like, you don't even have to announce it. Like, take the money. Just like maybe don't even like publicly announce that you're taking the money. So it's going to be interesting. And beyond that too, Andy, like athletes are going to promote some of these resorts to receive the dollars. So it's not going away anytime soon. It's not like a check into the collective and that's it.
Well, and I thought it was going to be a situation where if it was a gambling deal, it was an alcohol deal, it was going to have to be kind of vetted through the university. But I think it's come to the point where if you're going to give us some money, we'll take your money.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah.
Listen, anybody who wants to advertise on Andy Staples on 3, if you'd like to give us some money,
yep,
we'll take your money. I've read some ad copy from some companies on podcasts through the years that, let's be real, I was not particularly proud reading some of the puns that were written for me by these copywriters. And so, yeah, I'll take your money. I'm not going to criticize the Iowa State people for doing that because they in this environment, this is what it is. They are all trying to raise some money.
Yep.
Few can be as creative as FIU was. This was kind of a masterstroke because I remember this thing hit yesterday and I was like, oh my God, what a brilliant idea. Yep. Because again, we would not be talking about FIU otherwise.
And there isn't, like if the Big 12 does rename itself like the All-State 12, like there is going to be serious backlash. Like people are really going to be against it. This is an idea that drives publicity, drives dollars, also doesn't completely like tear apart like the history of like FIU or anything like that. But also aligns them with international superstar.
Well, and the newer you are as a school and a program, and the younger you are as a school and a program, the easier this is. So Scott Carr, the AD at FIU, where did he work before this? UCF. Like that's the one I'm looking at. Yeah. Because it is one of the youngest schools in the power conferences.
Yeah.
Like they can do all of this stuff. Now, there's not really an Orlando artist. Like you're not going to have a Matchbox 20 stadium at Rob Thomas Field.
No.
At least I hope not.
But Disney wants to reach out to a new generation.
Exactly. There are companies in town that do want to do business with you. I mean, like AAA's got their headquarters in the Orlando area. Maybe they want to do it. So it is out there for those. I think it's harder if you're Ohio State, if you're Penn State, to do stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of memorial stadiums out there too. But even there, I'm not sold that some of these fan bases would want to move away from that. You're definitely going to see a lot of on-field sponsorships in terms of like the naming rights of fields. That is coming and to be more popular. I mean, and when it's announced, it gets traction and all that. But at the same time, right, like you're not always referring to Ohio Stadium, Safelight Field like constantly.
Well, right. And that's the other thing about Ohio Stadium that's interesting because they have sold the name of the field. So Safelight, we've all heard their little jingle. Safelight repair, Safelight replace. You call them if your windshield's broken. And so they've already done all that. But it is interesting. And now you've got the name the field after the great head coach. You have Steve Spurrier Field at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium at Florida. You have Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium, or you're going to have that once they dedicate it. So you got to be careful how much real estate you give up to people you love.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe we just need, because like there already was a Saban statue, but it may be you just make statues of people. Yeah. And you leave the names off so you can sell the names.
Yeah. That could definitely happen. That could 100% happen.
It's going to be a brave new world. Yeah. Pete Nakos, thank you so much. This is you got a lot to cover here.
Yeah, I was just at the personnel symposium the last 2 days, and that's also been something to take in too, right? I mean, they're trying to figure out what the transfer portal is going to look like because the NCAA D1 Council is going to vote on that this October. It can move from 45 to 30 days. Guys want to know what their roster limits are going to look like. I've heard about a lot of partial scholarships. I mean, there's a lot going on right now in college sports.
A lot behind the scenes. A lot of people trying to make money. A lot of people trying to figure out what the rules are, and they don't know yet, and they won't know for a little while.
Exactly.
That'll keep you busy. Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Andy.
We got a few more of these because I made a long list of places that may need to look into having a popular artist name their stadium. Now, we gave Megan Thee Stadium to Texas Southern. I do think Houston, though, should memorialize someone. And I think Houston and Florida should memorialize people if we're going to change the names. So Houston, you have DJ Screw Memorial Stadium so that when somebody comes in and loses, you can say they got chopped and screwed. Florida, Ben Hill Griffin, citrus grower who gave money for the stadium expansion. That's why his name's on the stadium. But if they wanted to memorialize maybe the most famous person ever from Gainesville, Steve Spurrier Field at Tom Petty Memorial Stadium would be the way to do it. Now, on the current artist from the town who's made a bunch of money, who can help infuse some cash into the coffers, how about T-Pain Stadium at Florida State? A singer supporting the Seminoles. Ryan Willings is trying to tell me that Leonard Skinner came from Gainesville. No, Leonard Skinner is from Jacksonville, not from Gainesville. Tom Petty is from Gainesville. It would be Tom Petty's sister Hazel, less than Jake. We're in my wheelhouse here, Ryan. Jacksonville would be Leonard Skinner, the Allman Brothers. Tallahassee, T-Pain, Creed formed in Tallahassee, though those guys are from Orlando. So, yeah. Now, I was thinking about the Dallas Metroplex. You got SMU, you got TCU. Not a ton of great rappers. Like the DOC probably would have been the greatest rapper out of Dallas. He had an unfortunate accident that took his voice. We're obviously not naming a stadium after Vanilla Ice. So I think we move into another genre here. So for SMU, we have the Panteraplex. That would be tremendous. And of course, we go to South Carolina. And we can do this a couple different ways. Hootie in the Blowfish Stadium has the best ring to it. If you would like to have Darius Rucker just put his name on it by himself, he's still recording albums. He's got a great solo career going. But Hootie in the Blowfish Stadium just sounds better. So, how attached are we to Williams-Brice? I don't know. But I'm glad you guys appreciate the Panteraplex. Because their stadium right now, like the SMU stadium is named Gerald Ford Stadium, but it's not the Gerald Ford who was the president. That Gerald Ford went to Michigan. So we can change this to the Panteraplex. It would be spectacular. And yes, you could have, as Goat Dog points out in the chat, you could have some serious walkout music there. We got a lot of ideas. Keep them coming. But again, we got to make Project Pat Field happen. We've got to make Project Pat Field happen. All right, let's talk some actual football because we are not far away from the opening of the college football season. Week 0. We got a Saturday this Saturday, and then another Saturday. And then we're going to have week 0. We're going to have Florida State and Georgia Tech in Dublin. We talked a little ACC with our friend Stanford Steve yesterday. Now it's time for part 2 of that conversation. So we talked some ACC and Big Ten with a little SEC sprinkled in. Now we're going to hit the Big 12 and then the SEC proper. Because there are some really interesting ones. There's more interesting ones in the SEC, I think, than any other conference. And so we sprinkled in Florida and Oklahoma yesterday because they made sense in the conversation. But again, we're going to get to the question, I think, in the SEC that Vegas has posed to us, which is here's 4 teams. We think probably a couple of them are going to make the playoff, and we think probably a couple of them aren't. So you decide who you think is going to make the playoff. Those 4 teams are all at 9.5 for their win total. That's Alabama, it's Missouri, it's Ole Miss, and it is LSU. All of those at 9.5. It is essentially them asking you, who do you think will make the playoff? But before we get to that, we've got to hit a couple in the Big 12, and we will start, of course, with Coach Prime. All right, Stanford Steve. This is one you knew we were going to do. Red meat for everybody. Coach Prime.
Yeah.
5.5 win total, which would be, you got to make a bowl game. You got to be 2 wins better than last season to go over here. I have said I think Colorado's going to make a bowl game. So we know I'm taking the over on this one. I'm not really confident they're going to be much over 6 wins. I think 6 wins, 6 or 7 is probably the number. But do you think they can get better?
Yes, I do. I really do. Just looking at the last thing I read, I believe he brought in 72 players before the 23 season. 72 or 73 brand new players, never put on a Colorado uniform. 45 of those are already gone. Offensive line, 5 brand new starters last year. This year, 5 new brand new starters. What I do look at is, having played for him, his offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur. I think he's great in a role, especially in college, of having a game plan. I think that's going to help Shedeur a ton. What he was able to do, when you talk about pocket presence, I would put him right up there with Caleb Williams, and how he had to run for his life and still to be able to be accurate showed me wonders at the beginning of the season. And I know what happened later in the year, but that's what we're going to see with these teams changing conferences. Now, the experience those kids got, the spotlight that they were under after that week 1 win, nothing's going to be bigger than that to me. Now that they're going to the Big 12, which is going to be the most competitive league in the country, and I'm pretty firm in that, where I think multitude of teams can win it. But when you still have a quarterback like that got that experience, and all those kids that got that experience, I think that helps immensely with managing your expectation. Dion is going to Dion. He is going to put everything on him and take it to a level that no one else can go. But that's been him his whole life. There are plenty of conversations he has had with his team where things got out of hand last year, and they're going to learn from that, and they will learn from that. So I look at the schedule. The schedule's crazy to me, because I can't wait to see the point spreads on these games, because I think every game is winnable. I really do.
Right. And you don't know who's going to actually be good in the Big 12.
Yeah. I had, going through it, I had Utah and Kansas State playing in the conference championship game. I see both those teams on this Colorado schedule. I don't think they win those. Like Baylor. What's Baylor going to be? We can
talk about Baylor. Yeah. Actually, let's do it. Let's talk Baylor, because I think we both think Colorado's going over.
Okay.
I have said I think Dave Aranda is going to save his job this year.
Yep.
Baylor's total is 5.5. So you only got to make a bowl game for that. I don't think that saves his job, by the way. I'm not sure 6-6 saves the job. But I think 6-6 is doable. The thing is, though, like, you look at the schedule. At Utah.
Yep.
Oklahoma State. At West Virginia. That's nobody wants to go to Morgantown this year. I think that's one that people don't understand is going to be one of the tougher places to play. They're also at Lubbock and at Ames. Like, they got the trifecta of places you don't want to go.
Yep. Yeah. In that conference, we know it's funny. I was reading a thing about Texas and Oklahoma going to SEC, but the biggest stadium they play in the road was Ames. Like, that's the biggest stadium in the Big 12. Not the new Big 12.
Not one of theirs, but yeah.
But I thought that was kind of crazy. So they've been there. They know what to expect at those, road venues. I love the hire of Jake Spavital. I think he's a great offensive mind. I wonder about the quarterback depth after the starter, knowing what Jake wants to do and put what he puts on a quarterback's plate. But there's no doubt in my mind Dave Aranda could coach his butt off. I just think that the way people plucked his roster, it was unfortunate with the offensive coordinator. I thought Grimes was good, but there was it felt like there was just a disconnect. You saw how smart he was with that quick turnaround when they had that great season. So I don't question Aranda at all as a head coach. I think he's tremendous. I think he's a super great football mind, and also he was never a head coach before. You're going to learn. You're going to learn a ton from year 1 to year 2. You're also going to learn even more from 2 to 3 if you had so much success in that start year. So I look at Baylor as the ultimate outlier. Like, they're the wild card in this conference because of what I believe Jake Spavital could do offensively and what Aranda could do defensively. Now, look, you said the road games. I love West Virginia this year. The question I do have is the defense, but a road game that's going to be in November at Morgantown. I don't have that as a win for Baylor. So I would lean. I think 6-6. So you think 6-6? He saves his job.
I don't know if he saves his job at 6-6 because
Okay.
that's the question. If you're Mac Rhodes, is that good enough? Is it showing enough improvement? Like, you think that's going, because they brought in DeQuan Finn.
Yeah.
But the question is how much can you pass this year?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it because of that? DeQuan Finn is one of my favorite transfers this year. I think he's going to do well in Jake Spavital's offense. So
yes,
but I 6-6 is enough to go over here.
That's right.
I think he probably needs to be 7-5, 8-4.
They're there.
Be really happy.
They're there. Obviously, I mean, here's the thing too: is now that we have this one less of a conference, when you go on the road, you can't expect to win if you don't play your best. Like, those days are done. Those venues are just too tough. These teams, when they know they get their home schedule, the onus that teams put on their own players and staffs in home games because of why do you have to win home? All your boosters are there. You want everybody in a good mood. You know how important your boosters are now and are going to be even more important as we move on in this NIL era. So the idea of road games and just being more focused, I think, is going to be a big onus for a multitude of teams. And Baylor, a middle of the pack, not a lot of expectations. But then you count in the pressure of a head coach possibly coaching for his job. That's a lot that could instill in a locker room that kind of makes you almost want to go on the road and be able to prove yourself. Oh, all right. So what? We won a game. No one's still believing us because we won a home game. All right, let's go on the road and prove it that our staff's good enough and our players are good enough. That's the great thing we have in this sport, because you don't know what's going on in that locker room and the belief or the non-belief that we've seen with some teams that happens throughout the course of a season. But I still think the world of Aranda, and I do expect a bowl season for Baylor.
Let's go to the SEC. We gave you. We talked about Florida. We talked about Oklahoma in part 1, but I'm going to give you 3 teams, Steve. They all have the same total.
Okay.
And basically this total asks a question. Is this a playoff team or not?
Yep.
So there are 3 teams in the SEC at 9.5. Actually, there's 4 teams at 9.5. Well, let's do all 4.
All right.
Let's do all 4. I feel like one of these doesn't belong in this group, and you tell me if you feel the same way. Alabama is 9.5. Missouri is 9.5. LSU is 9.5. Ole Miss is 9.5.
My expectation level, I have Ole Miss as the highest of that group. I have a question for you with 2 of those teams. Just reading, because they played a great game last year. Missouri and LSU. Which defensive situation would you rather have?
Missouri's.
Okay.
Even though they lost the coaches,
and
they brought in players
and the NFL
who could help them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I because to me with Missouri, now the question becomes what you always were worried about, and then you have that is depth. Like we know why you were good. We look at the NFL draft.
Exactly.
But I do think Drink is smart enough to know he doesn't have those guys, so they do have to be more dynamic on offense, and they got the guys to do it. on offense. I haven't watched the running back from Georgia State. People love him.
Marcus Carroll,
and fits right into that system with the outside zone, the stretch, whatever you want to play. That Schrader made a killing on last year, and that drink just ran into the ground. It was just awesome to watch. They had like, here's what we're running, stop us. And personality-wise, I wouldn't take any other head coach in the country than Drink. Love the dude and what he's brought to that university, and knowing him from prior stops. He's got everything. Just ask him; he'll tell you. But LSU to me, taking Missouri's defensive coordinator, but not still having a belief in the pieces. How much can great coaching do? We saw the debacle that was when Bo went there with Coach O after the title year. And, that was still some players on that roster. So that's what worries me with LSU is a new staff. And everybody's like, all right, what are we going to do? All right, we're going to simplify things and make us more attacking.
Everybody says that.
Good defensive player in the country. What's his role? He's going back to middle backer. I'm not gonna argue and be the guy that everybody put him on the edge. He's the best pass rusher. Yeah, but you got to think of your defense as a whole. They're better if he's in the middle. I get he could still rush the passer from the middle, but you have to have your best player in the middle. If he's on the edge, guess where I'm going with the ball? I'm never.
Well, right. The fear is because he's 220 pounds.
Correct.
Like if he's on the edge, you're going to run right at him.
Yeah, I'm going to run.
You're sitting pullers at him like it's
Yeah. So I put Ole Miss at the top. I have huge expectations. The one bet I've made was Jackson Dart Heisman. I look at what they did in coming back in game. That's where Lane was always. I thought he put a lot of stuff on him. Obviously, right? The things he said, the way he goes about himself. But last year, you go back and watch the games they came back and won. That's the impressive stuff. And why did they do that? Because of Lane Kiffin and because of Jackson Dart. They gave up 49 points to LSU. They were down 9 in the fourth quarter. They win that game in regulation. You don't do that without a special kid at quarterback. And I'm a huge believer in Jackson Dart. I love the depth that Lane has gotten across the board as being the portal king. So, again, with Miami, I've never done it in years past. I'm jumping in. I'm in on Ole Miss this year. I do believe that roster, and Lane is smart enough and has got enough experience now to know what to handle. We don't want to talk about bowl games and how much stock you put in. Go back and look at the numbers, what they did at Penn State. That defense was, as statistically, I think, the best. And Priestcorn went crazy in that game. How many times do you see a tight end go off on the number one defense in the country? So I'm all in on Ole Miss. I put them at the top. I'm still believing in Alabama. They are right there. I think it's worth a bet. There's still plus money to make the playoff. I love DeBoer. People had a question about recruiting. I don't know about these late flips or whatever. He's put his foot in the ground and been able to do that. Everything I hear about Milroe, he's better with the football. That's taking care of it, and accuracy. What were the two things that he has to be better at to go to the next level? Taking care of the football and being more accurate. There's still 4 and 5 stars at wide receiver on Alabama's roster. When I go back and look, I thought those receivers for Washington were pretty well coached. They're damn talented, but last year they were pretty well coached. When you look at his scheme and whether they're going to, what they do against man or what they do against zone, they always had a plan, and I think he's so detail oriented offensively, and the wins compared to the losses speak for themselves when it comes to Kalen. When I look at the defense. Hearing Nick Saban say that they got some questions to answer in the secondary, I'm not going to argue with that. His assessment, he knows those guys better. But I like the guys that they brought in. Transfer from SC, I think he's a plug-and-play starter. Sab from Michigan, believe he'll be a starter. Love the middle linebacker, one of my favorite players in the country. Will we see the defensive line? And this I know you've talked about this. The depth of the War Daddies in the SEC on the defensive line, we don't have a lot. We don't have
no, but I do feel like Alabama, Jaheim Otis is back.
Look at Georgia. Look what they've put in the draft the last couple of years. They're serviceable. They're good. They're going to rotate multiple guys, but there's not those 3 techniques there. the old tilts. We don't see any more tilts playing. No nose tilt. So I think just hearing coaches talk, that's a big question to me. Is they're worried about the defensive line knowing extra games and that you're going to have to play if you're going to be successful. But when I look at Alabama, they have guys there that have played, and I'll take that. When I look at a season as a whole, and knowing that I have guys that have been in the trenches before, and this is what we're going to go out and do. The Georgia game is it's enormous because I think at that point in the season we want to see where both those teams are, and we're going to get that with that. Can Wisconsin be tricky going up there? I think that's big noon, right? Like that's 11 a.m. local. How do you get that? Hopefully Wisconsin opens the doors earlier so all the students could get to their seats by the end of the first quarter, like the last couple of times I've been there. But they could show up earlier too. But I'm still a believer in Alabama. I would look at more to make the playoff than bet over 9.5 wins because you're going to get plus money. If that makes sense to you.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I still think they have a super high ceiling. I really want to see the improvements in Milroe. We're going to see that when they go to Wisconsin if he did make them because you're going to need to throw the football there to win the game. So I still my expectation of Alabama hasn't changed, but it's more of a I want to see it, because of the change in the scheme and the guy in charge. But I'm super fired up. I thought again a home run higher.
I think we're kind of flipped on Alabama and Ole Miss because I want to see it with Ole Miss. I want to see that their improvements on the D line, their increased depth on the O line. I want to see that in action. I trust Alabama's roster more, so I feel like they're the kind of outlier of those four.
Understood.
Like I feel very confident with the over. I feel very confident with the say yes, they're making the playoff. Like you said, where you're going to make more money on that one. I am confident Ole Miss is going to make the playoff.
Yep.
The schedule bodes well for them. Like Ole Miss and Missouri got a better schedule draw than Alabama and LSU. That is
it's
a fact.
Yep.
But I like Alabama and Ole Miss here. I would go under on Missouri and LSU. And Missouri, I said I liked Missouri's defensive situation better because of they brought in some players to help them in that, because of what they lost. They lost Darius Robinson and Rakestraw and Hopper. But LSU, neither one of them, I think, are going to be able to play as well on the defense side of the ball as they need to make the playoff. I don't worry about either one of them on offense. I think they're both going to be good on offense. But I think one of them is going to have to prove they can play very well on defense to make the playoff because like LSU's schedule is very hard.
Yeah.
Missouri's schedule's not, but they still have a couple games in there that can get them because like you have Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma in a row. Like you could lose all those.
Yep.
Going to A&M, you could lose that game. Like those are all. So 10-2 is not easy, even though this is one of the quote unquote easier schedules in the SEC. So I got one more for you though, Steve. Yep. We touched on it in part one. Auburn 7.5. The idea of Hugh Freeze being able to speak directly to the quarterback through the helmet.
Yep.
I think that helps Peyton Thorne an awful lot.
I totally agree. I'm really, really excited to see Auburn. I'm dying to see Cam Coleman and what I've heard from people that have seen him. Like,
did you see the still image floating around on the internet of the one-handed catch?
Yes.
The other day?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. When I hear people, I'm like, what's the? Oh God, he's built like a Greek god. He runs like a deer. Like the whole package. And then you just think about how Auburn has never had a guy like that at wide receiver. Like you go through Auburn's wide receiver records, you'll be blown away at how attainable they are if Cam Coleman is the real deal.
I've tried to figure because Philip Dukes, who works with us, went to Auburn, and I said, Dukes, like, who has Auburn had? Like, did they ever sign a receiver that was this hyped? Who's like the best receiver in Auburn history? And he's like, I could name guys, but you're gonna be like, meh.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Frank Sanders. I think
Frank Sanders is the guy I'd name.
Great player. But when you look at the numbers, and now in this day and age, and then you just think about Hugh Freeze and who he's had and the success that he's had with players. I love this dynamic. He's just crushing it on the recruiting front. I love that fan base because of how crazy they are. And I want them. I really am rooting for Auburn and Florida this year in the SEC because those are the teams we need. When they're good, it's so much more fun. And I'm really hoping Game Day could get to Auburn. We haven't been there in a while. It's one of my favorite. I've said that earlier. One of my favorite places. And what I love about Auburn here is go back and look what they did. I get everybody brings up the New Mexico State, okay, but Alabama and Georgia were probably the best games they played, and they lost. Mm-hmm. They lost. And going back and watching the tape of the Auburn-Georgia game, like that really freaked me out with Carson Beck because if he doesn't make those throws, Auburn wins that game. Like that what they needed to do and how precise. Like they had one drive and they had to do it, and he was as good as I've seen in the sport. So that really opened me up to Carson Beck. But then I go back and look, like they were put in that position because Hugh took the play call that week, and Peyton Thorne ripping off 40-yard runs like it's nothing. And I think Peyton Thorne, again, go back and look at his receivers at Michigan State. They're pretty good. They're playing in the NFL.
Are you considering Keon Coleman was a good receiver?
Oh, God, I love Keon Coleman. So I think Peyton Thorne is going to be way, way more efficient. Having great players, I think, helps decision making. Also, where you get caught, in a tough spot and you don't have the best guys. What are you going to do? You're either going to hold on to the ball. Bad things are going to happen, and probably the least talked. How do I say this? Least talked about
great
player.
Yeah,
in that league is Jarquez Hunter. That guy's a stud. An absolute stud. I'm going to try and do where I just draft myself, but the running backs in the SEC this year, and I love Hunter. You talk about making the most of a situation last year. Again, I mentioned Hugh takes that play call. Look at his numbers the last 5 games. Look how many yards they ran for. I think they went over 250 against Bama. And that's a week after that New Mexico State game. So there's some resiliency that I believe is built in Auburn just because of how crazy they are, and I love that about them. So I think I think it's 7-5, and I think that's a really, really good season for them where they could keep building, he could keep recruiting. So I would go under, but I think that's a super successful season at 7-5 with that schedule and what they have.
I'm going to go over. I think they can do 8-4.
Okay.
Which means they're going to have to steal one they're not supposed to win.
Which can happen at that home state.
Whether that's and now they're going to Georgia, going to Alabama. Yeah, so they're going to have to win something on the road because I mentioned they have to go to Missouri. At Kentucky's no picnic either.
That's the one. Missouri or Kentucky you're going to have to beat.
Yep.
And that's fun. That's a whole lot of fun.
That's it. I am so pumped up now. These are coming soon, Steve. Like we're 2.5 weeks away from Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Dublin.
Yeah, I'm leaving the 19th. I'm like, that's 2 weeks. I can't believe it.
Oh,
you've been
have a Guinness for me.
Have you been to Dublin?
I haven't. No.
I'm really worried about the food situation.
What? I'm trying to think of corned beef. Like nothing wrong with corned beef and cabbage is great.
Every meal?
Not every
do they have
meal.
Corned beef with eggs? That's like
they do.
I'll be down with that. I'm good.
Yeah, I think you'll be all right. A lot of potatoes.
We're so spoiled though with our travel and the places we get to go. I mean,
oh yeah,
come on. What's
lamb stew? Lamb stew, Steve. You gotta love lamb stew.
I'll try it for sure.
Okay.
What's and then the following week I'm in College Station. What's my taco place?
Oh gosh. You've got Fuego that's 24 hours.
Yes.
That you can you hit the drive-through at 3 a.m. It is It's so good.
There.
You used to be able to get
You
rotisserie
ran
chicken there at like 3 a.m.
You ran there before your crazy workout, Andy came in there to have lunch with me. That was awesome.
I did. And like, that's what I used to try to do, is outrun my diet. And I'm here to tell you, Steve, it doesn't work.
Oh, I know. Look at me.
Also, here's the problem with College Station. So you can go to Fuego, and it's great, and I love it. But you've also got they've got a bunch of new barbecue places there now.
Okay.
Like it, and then you got the Republic Steakhouse. Like, that's the place to see and be seen in College Station. So if you can get one of those tables by the bar at Republic, I'm telling you right now, you will be in for a treat, because everybody who's anybody is going to come through. Cameos are endless.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Stanford Steve, thank you so much.
You got it, my man. I appreciate you having me on.
The great Stanford Steve. The Auburn thing is going to be very interesting. We put up a poll on the 9.5 question. Which of the 4 SEC teams that are at 9.5 do you think is the best? I expected Alabama to run away with it, but Bama sitting there at 39%. Ole Miss not far behind in our poll. So I think there's some believers in the Rebs. They're at 33% right now. Those are the two I would expect to be the top vote getters, but I thought Alabama would kind of run away with it. So I think there's you guys also kind of agreeing with Nick Saban that Ole Miss has improved on the line of scrimmage enough to really compete with these teams. I do think we still need to see it. And I do think that Ole Miss at LSU is going to be one of those litmus test games, because that's a place that Ole Miss has struggled to win. And they should be able to beat LSU there this year. They should be able to. But they still got to do it. So we will find out with them. Now, obviously, if you'd like to know all about that game, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're going to want to subscribe to OM Spirit. If you're an LSU fan, you're going to want to subscribe to our LSU site at On3, the Bengal Tiger. So now's a better time than any to do that, because if you use the code Andy1, it is $1 for your first month. And it's not just for those two sites. Whoever you're a fan of, we've probably got a site. And so if you're an Ohio State fan and you want to subscribe to Letterman Row, Michigan fan wants to subscribe to the Wolverine, if you're a Florida State fan, want to subscribe to War Chant, the Wolf Packer for the NC State fans, you have a golden opportunity. $1 for your first month. Use the code Andy1. Get on those message boards. Become a part of the community. Be around people who are like-minded, who love the same place you do as much as you do. It's nothing better, because it's about to get real. It is about to get crazy. All these win-loss, over-under totals that we've been doing, we feel so sure about these things. But once this season starts, it's all going to just... because we've never seen a season like this before. All this conference movement, the schedules are so different than what we've been used to. It's going to be spectacular. You know what else is going to be spectacular? Tomorrow's show, because it is a Dear Andy show. You guys drive the show. We'll also have the Dear Andy column at on3.com. Remember, it's not the same questions. So we will discuss here. You can read there. Best of both worlds. I need your questions, though. I need to know, what do you want to know? So ask your Dear Andy questions. You can find me on X or on Instagram, Andy_Staples. You can also find me, AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. If you have an epic question, if you want to put your question on video, we do love to play your video questions. So Andy_Staples on social media. AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com is the way to send an email with your question. We've already gotten a couple good ones, but we would love some more. Tomorrow, we will answer those questions here and in written form. And we're so close, guys. We are so close. We got a Pitbull Stadium now. Have no idea who the next naming rights deal is going to be. I don't think it's going to be as much fun as Pitbull, but one never knows. That's the beauty of college football. It can surprise you. You can turn off the mic for a show, grab your phone, start perusing, and find out there's a Pitbull Stadium. That's how this sport operates. It is the wildest, weirdest, sometimes dumbest, but always the most fun. Thank you so much. Get those questions in. We'll talk to you tomorrow.